Okay, well, as you know, my name is Pam Rutledge, and I'm faculty of media psychology at Fielding. And I really like to thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. I'm very pleased to introduce the following panel. Practitioner Heal Thy Selfie, a presentation of recommended guidelines for professional online engagement. As we all know, social media use really raises a lot of questions. And for professionals in particular, appropriate, smart, safe limits of self-disclosure, boundaries, sharing, and client contact can be very challenging to identify and sustain. The goal of this presentation is to promote awareness of the range of professional digital communications, address some ethical questions, and present the guidelines from the APA Division 46 Media Psychology and Technology's recommended best practices for digital engagement. This knowledge is essential for private practices, institutions, and organizations, and especially now that so many people are moving online. So I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Joanne Broder and Dr. Dawn Grant. Joanne was the 2017 president of Division 46, the Society for Media Psychology and Technology of the American Psychological Association. She launched Division 46 Device Management and Intelligence Committee and continues to be active in the division as the newly elected member at large. She's the author of Finish Your Dissertation, Don't Let It Finish You, which is going to be very valuable to people in the audience, and the co-founding editor of the APA journal, Psychology of Popular Media. She and Dawn are currently working together writing Healthy Device Management and the Practice of Good Digital Citizenship that'll be published by APA. Dawn is a longtime friend and colleague and is an award-winning media psychologist, speaker, researcher, as well as a nationally certified doctoral addictions counselor, a substance use disorder certified counselor, and executive director of Resolutions Teen Center, an intensive adolescent outpatient treatment program. Dawn speaks and researches in the area of addiction and healthy device management. In addition to the book project with Joanne, Dawn is the president-elect of Division 46. So before I turn it over to Joanne and Dawn, let me just remind you that at the end of the 45-minute presentation, we'll switch to Q&A. Please post your questions in the chat window. We'll be gathering them as we go along, or post them as you think of them during the Q&A, and they'll have a chance to answer them. So now I'll turn this over to you guys, Joanne and Dawn.
Thanks so much, Pam. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me get your slides up. You can start talking, I'll get your slides.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that these times are very uncertain. And so the presentation we'd like to do today, we've been working on this for a very long time, but what we have found is that now, as we're all so reliant on social media and on engaging through telecommunications, Joanne and I feel there's even more importance to help and maybe offer some suggestions and recommendations of how to safely, ethically, and with good practice, promote our online engagement. Joanne, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for being here. It's an honor to spend this morning with you, and we look forward to sharing just kind of our guidelines for social media for professionals, so we can all kind of have a healthy and safe online presence and relationship with our followers, clients, and students.
Okay, next slide, Pam. Okay, so why did we want to create these guidelines? Joanne, why do we do this? Why are we doing this? I said a little bit of guidelines.
So why did we do this? I mean, one, there's really nothing out there for people in the behavioral sciences about how they should act online, what kind of presence, what type of posts, both personally and professionally. And also, we've seen a lot of people really damage their career by posts, tweets, interactions that they think are snarky, that they think are funny, and they've been damaging in the long term.
Right, and well, for my purposes, when Joanne created the committee for APA Division 46 of Healthy Device Management and the Practice of Good Citizenship, it really offered me an opportunity to talk about some of the things that I've just observed. And I suppose, or I would assume, that all of us, as we're engaging online, we've all kind of seen things that we kind of go Scooby-Doo, but really the bottom line for me was for practitioners and for educators. I keep it really simple. Doctors who knew us very well and maybe had treated our families, maybe for generations, they used to cut out their addresses in magazines in the waiting room. And my concern was that now we're not trying to, and we'll talk about this a lot, whatever you decide is appropriate or that you want to post, that is your prerogative and absolutely your right, and we endorse that. But in terms of online engagement, what we've been seeing is that the disclosure and maybe the familiarity, or like Joanne said, maybe some postings that are could compromise you or your organization. We just wanted to give some guidelines and suggestions and maybe just some thought about something you haven't thought about before as we all now migrate and increasingly more over the confinement online, and ensure that you are posting something that you feel very comfortable with, but that also wouldn't compromise you or your organization or your affiliations. But again, we want to make it clear, whatever you decide that you want to post, that is absolutely your right. Next slide, please. This is kind of our thesis. And this is for the book that Joanne and I were so fortunate and grateful that AP asked us to write on this topic. This is pretty much our thesis. So Joanne, you want to talk about it?
So how much do you contemplate the effect and impact your posts might have before posting them? You know, think about it. Do you edit your post? Do you really think through and say, what is my intention for this post? I don't know how many Psychology Today bloggers there are. I'm a Psychology Today blogger. And it's interesting, before you post your blog, there's always a message that pops up on the screen that says, are you sure you're ready to publish this post? And I must tell you, you know, the article, you know, the blog was ready. You know, if it's in the screen and in the frame, it's ready. I've proofread it 1,000 times. I've made 1 million changes. It's in the system. I've read through it a few times, made a few changes, and then when I go to hit publish, that one question, are you sure you're ready to publish this post? You know, that makes me stop dead in my tracks and read it one more time. And that's after reading it how many times? So could you imagine if social media sites had that? Are you sure you want to publish this post? Are you sure you want to send?
Right. So in terms of what we decided with the committee, the Device Management and Intelligence Committee, what we decided to do was really think about this with mindfulness. And so we spent a couple of years with our committee, and we came up with all kinds of ideas and all kinds of guidelines or suggestions. And we spent that time going through, looking at them, discussing them, and then editing them down, and really looking at what we felt were the most pertinent suggestions and guidelines for professionals to ensure that you keep the sanctity and integrity of your online presence. And we came up with a dozen. There are 12. And so we beta tested them, we're peer reviewed them. And so the guidelines that we decided that we're going to present to you today are just things to think about. And so that's what we wanted to do, because that will be maybe for you, what Joanne said, are you ready to publish? Next slide, please. So if you don't believe us and you've never seen this, these are some things. Now, what we're about to show you, we have absolutely made them confidential, ensured that there will be the anonymity of the people is there, so you won't know there. But what we're going to show you are some examples of what we have seen. These are all professionals. These are all people who are, practitioners, educators, clinicians working across the field. And these are some of the posts that we have seen. Next slide.
And I'm sure you have your own campfire stories of posts that you've seen from colleagues that are cringy.
So this was a post, and this person, you can read it and see it for yourself. Now, we are all interested if we post something. So what we said earlier, and this is what we talk about, what is your real intention for posting anything? We all want something out of a post, and it can be a variety of things. But what we're looking at is cultivating or maybe waiting for responses. And what Joanne and I want to suggest to you also is that when you present something or when you post something, I want us all to maybe think about, we're interested in maybe the responses, but what we don't think about is the people who see our posts and don't respond. But they may have a thought about us, and it may impact maybe opportunities in the future, maybe the way that they have thought about us, or it's changed. So we don't know what people are sitting out there on their devices thinking about our posts, because all we see are the reactions and responses. So in terms of this one, you can see it's sometimes when I'm feeling down, I'll desperately think of something poignant to say on Facebook in order to elicit likes and comments. I'm really sick. Next slide, please. Well, what we thought about this one is, and this was from a person of US origin and lives in the United States. The first thing is, dude, the debauchery on the road is real. Where do drivers get their licenses? Well, from the spelling of licenses, I can only assume that that would be England, because that is how you spell licenses in England. But just the content of this alone, you can make your own decisions. And I'm
No thanks,
sure.
I'll take the bus. Really, I'll take the bus.
Next slide, please. Okay.
And again, it's not like we all don't feel these feelings. It's not like we all don't feel bummed. We don't want to shout out to the world if we've had a bad customer service experience somewhere, or somebody said something that really angered us, but to really just share this kind of on the online, billboard. And what does that say about you?
And what really made me have some feelings about this is that the person said, I feel really bummed right now, and only 4 people responded. And I don't know, maybe that might have exacerbated or accelerated them feeling bummed. The other thing is that what Joanne and I talk about, our friends, all of us, we have friends, and usually they know if what's going on in our world and in our lives. So if we're putting something out there in social media, it means we're really wanting to let people know in a wider circle of then, instead of just our close little friends. But I can't lie, I felt a little bad for this person, because 4 people, I might have bummed them out more. We've talked about, some of the research done on, dysregulation or reactions or responses that can come from social media engagement. So I don't know that this would have really helped the person. Next slide, please. So these were 4. And if you see them, again, I had feelings about it, and I didn't know what to do about it. So it's my birthday, and I feel so alone. It sure is quiet on Facebook today. This world makes me sick. Don't anyone try to contact me. I am done. Now, that one is really impacting, because that's a red flag. So how you react or respond to that, because that's a post that makes us, or makes me feel like I need to contact this person because they seem like they're unsafe. I'm feeling so alone in this world. Does it even matter? And again, these are all from clinicians, educators, professionals who are also human. Next slide, please. So please do not call me today. I'm too upset. Something bad happened, and I don't need any more drama. Oh, dear God, please pray for us. Love, Deb. And I went, Deb! What? Oh my God, we got to find Deb. But Deb put this out there. So obviously what we said earlier in our slide, which is our thesis, why do you post anything? Do I have any real friends? Hashtag fake friends.
What's the point?
Oh, Sorry, Joanne?
I said, what's the point?
Did you want to say something, Joanne? What's the point? What do you need? The other thing is that when we see these posts, it really is giving, and I'll speak for myself, I see this and my emotional response changes. So I might have been fine and happy and upbeat, but then I see this, and with a lot of social media or any kind of engagement, it changed me. And suddenly I am carrying this. And so that's also, we talk about the impact of our social media posts on others that we don't even know. But my feelings changed. I was, I got a little dysregulated for poor Deb. Go ahead, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Well, Joanne, do you want to take this one, since this is, this is a worker among workers. Joanne?
Yeah, I think if you're going to ridicule your boss, you might want to do it in a private text message. My boss was such a monster this morning. Could you imagine the boss or somebody at the company seeing that? Probably shouldn't have had 3 glasses of wine at paint night. Yeah, I think that might be a little TMI. Again, we're people. We have feelings.
Oh, also, sorry, the hashtag hung over at work. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I was going to say.
I was saying hashtag. Go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, and yeah, the lack of professionalism and the hungover, the hashtag hungover at work. Again, a lot of us can admit to having those moments, but not to be printed on the billboard in the sky.
Yeah, well, I'm also thinking maybe there needs to be an intervention done at this person who keeps showing up hungover at work. But if any of their colleagues saw this, or their boss, we can only imagine it's probably not going to go well. Next slide, please. So the top one, this is someone who was doing a presentation similar to what we're doing right now. And this was a part of the one sheet that was posted online, talking about healthy device management and good engagement. And then in the learning objectives, familiar yourself and score your relationship with use smartphone, gain a deeper understanding of the psychological reaction to the screen. These are not edited, by the way, except for removing any kind of identifying information. Develop strategies to support healthy habits with your smartphone, and then just the in real life, not capitalizing the R. Hypnotherapist is their person who requested me. I think they mean hypnotherapist. Register today. Again, we can all make these errors. So maybe sometimes it's just about proofreading your work before you post it. Next slide, please.
Yeah, this one is pretty much a classic, where the teacher who was doing the presenting posted this herself of her audience, who you could see is falling asleep, looking at their phone. And aside from the fact, you notice the hashtag, the gift of failure. So failure spelled wrong. So again, think about, what does this say about your brand? What does this say about you as a professional? And kind of going back to our point earlier, we know who likes us and who comments us and cheers us on. We don't know who's rolling their eyes. We don't know who we've turned off, and we don't know who's canceled us. Somebody could look at that post and say, we're not going to have her present at our workshop again.
Right. And so before we move on, there's a few that, now that we've shown you examples to, evidence, that there is our little data. I want to share with you a few personal ones that I have been approached with, because it's not uncommon for people to call me and say, Don, okay, I may or may not have aired on social media. What do I do? It's kind of a Roseanne moment, trying to walk it back. Well, once it's out there, it's out there. So I've had those calls. I also have people who will call me and they'll say, look, I'm thinking about posting this. What do you think? Which we'll get to later, about helping, maybe having someone peer review. But there's a few that in my personal world I wanted to share with you. So there was a teacher, who works in a school district. Her political viewpoint is very different from the school district that she works in. So they're opposing political viewpoints, which is fine. Again, I want to reiterate, Joanne and I support you, free speech, post whatever you like. But sometimes you have to be, well, always you need to be aware of that there, as long as you're going to do that, be aware of some backlash. So this teacher called me and they have a political viewpoint that's different. And they had been posting their political viewpoint, which the parents of some of their students had seen. And this teacher was called into her supervisor's office and was told that the principal who was in the room with her said, I don't know what to do because I keep getting calls from parents from what you're posting and telling me that they don't want you teaching their kids. So there's a therapist who was trying to get work. And I have a teen program that I run in Santa Monica and Los Angeles. And I looked at the social media because all of us, are aware now that our CVs are great. But we also have to be aware that a lot of times if we are applying for something, they'll look at our social media. So because I work with kids, this therapist had called me and she said, okay, I just want to get ahead of this. And she, on her social media, had posted some photos of a trip that she had to Cabo. And she said to me, can you review this and make sure this is okay? Now, she didn't want to take the pictures down, which is fine, but it was kind of Girls Gone Wild in Cabo, and she knew that some of the parents or some of the other people would see it, and she had already had someone talk to her about it. There was a clinical director at a program who had posted she loves her job, but the commute was killing her. She was called into her boss's office who said to her, I'm really glad that you love the job, the commute's no longer a problem, you're fired. There's a psychiatrist I know who works and does some pro bono work in a prison, which is wonderful. But he was joking and used to share with me that, he was always worried that some of the people who were that he cared for, who were inmates in the prison, were mad at him or didn't like him because he wouldn't give them the medication that they wanted. And he'd say, oh, they're probably mad at me. So I said to him, well, that's great. I love that you do that work. But you might want to then think about your posting. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, your social media, you post where you live. You've been posting where your kids go to school. You posted your new car. You share where you guys are at any given time and do check-ins. I said, if you work in this and you might have some people who are maybe not happy with you, you realize that they maybe get paroled and you've disclosed where you live and everything about your family. And he went, oh. And so he's amended his online engagement. Then there was a clinician who called me who was on a social dating site, which is great. And she had met someone on this site and they were exchanging and engaging and then sharing some artifacts. And then she discovered that it was actually one of her clients who had catfished her. Hashtag awkward next session. So these are just some of the stories that in my life where people have called me or asked me for some help. Next slide, please.
So clinicians and educators,
Joanne?
take a step back. Think, what do your posts say about you? What do they reveal? How do you think you're perceived by your clients, your colleagues, your students? How are your posts impacting your brand, your practice, kind of your career?
Next slide, please.
So in terms of kind of what type of posts pretty much harm you, overall, anything that's overly political, religious, opinionated, complaining, over negativity, being controversial, oversharing, grammatically incorrect in spelling. If we're educated professionals, our post should reflect it. Arguing, bullying, and being just too cool for rules. Just think, kind of acting like you're just above and maybe posting, we snuck into the community pool when it was closed. You know, what does that say about you? It must have been fun, but just don't put it online. Attention seeking, overly attention seeking, and anything that doesn't really support your mission, your program, your community, your family, anything that isn't authentic to you, which we'll get in more detail.
Right. And again, if you want to post anything, that's fine. But what we also want to remind you of is if you on that social media, whatever the platform is, if you recognize or claim affiliation with an organization, a community, a job, a university, if you on your social media platform where you're posting things, it's about the idea of being respectful to that community, to that organization, to that university, to the practice where you work with the others, that people might assume that that is also their representation as well. So we'll talk about later, again, post whatever you want, but if you are claiming affiliation on that platform, then you might want to be mindful about that people might associate your thoughts and your posts with that organization.
I mean,
Next
I
slide,
got to that point, I got a call from somebody asking for some help. There was a nurse in a large community hospital had made a post about how they don't want to take care of people of a certain culture. So needless to say, that nurse didn't keep her job, but you know, she has every right to vocalize her personal feelings, but again, it doesn't reflect the organization where she works, and she has no right to be there since she is in a profession that's supposed to be open to helping everybody.
And if you do want to post those things, then all we recommend is just remove the affiliations and just make it a personal social media page. And then as long as you do that, there will be no alignment that can be claimed. All right, so here we go. Here, I know what you've been waiting for. Here come our suggested guidelines. Next slide, please. All right, this is just the one sheet. So we're gonna go through them because we don't expect you to be able to see all these. We just wanted to show you that we have them all together. There's 12 of them. And then in purple, what you can see, those are just our little tags of what would be the thesis of that particular guideline. So these are the Society for Media and Technology Device Management Intelligence Committee, of which Joanne are the co-chairs, are recommended guidelines. These are just recommended. You don't have to follow these. There's not going to be any backlash from APA if you don't. We're just trying to give you some guidelines. So it's just what we think. But don't worry if you know that you're going to, if you don't follow them, there are no consequences from us or from APA or from anyone outside organization. I just want to make that clear. And if you have questions about that, please ask. But we don't want you to think there's any kind of consequence for not following them at all. Joanne, do you want to add to that just to make that clear? Because I want to really make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we're coming from a place of prevention, of preventing anybody from making posts that were similar to the ones that we shared. And again, we don't want you to harm your brand, your practice, your reputation.
Okay. I know that we, in the interest of time, next slide, let's get into them. Next slide, please.
So, okay, so professional code of conduct. So we're kind of, you know, this was written more for the American Psychological Association, but any organization, you know, most organizations have their own ethical guidelines, you know, for in-person behavior. And basically your online behavior should reflect the same type of code of conduct and ethics as your offline behavior. Next slide.
Next slide, please. Number 2, just remember posting is permanent. And even if you have the strictest of privacy settings and filters, there is no guarantee that the content is not accessible, even if it was just a screenshot, even if it was just imprinting in the mind. But even if you delete it, it could be archived somewhere on a server or beamed out into space, who knows? But posting is permanent. Even if you delete it, it's somewhere, or someone may have captured it. So we just want you to keep in mind that once any information is shared online, it is archived forever. And we've already seen that even, all of the people who have been compromised or vulnerable, Equifax, Quest Diagnostic, Cambridge Analytics. So you just need to know that when you post it, it's there. All right, next, please.
Authenticity is key. So do your posts reflect who you are as a person? Are they true to yourself, how you really feel? Or is it, that's what we recommend, that you keep your posts authentic to who you are, as well as sharing information that's true and reflects how you feel with fact checking. Next slide, please.
Right, so yeah, okay. So next, thank you. So practicing professionalism and positivity. So practicing is our recommendation, again, whatever you want to put, but we really, especially in the world today, when everyone is it's so ambiguous, and there's so much concern, and everyone is, uncertain. So especially now more than ever, practicing good digital citizenship and avoiding unprofessional interactions and commentary, and taking the time to carefully consider how your online engagement could be perceived by others. Like we said earlier, we're so interested in what people respond, I think, that we don't think about who's not responding. So you want to set a good example. So we have these R's: remain thoughtful, recognize impulsivity, refrain from participating in arguments. There's also a lot of trolls out there right now trying to spark controversy. I've seen it, maybe some of you have, and it's just not a good look. And they're doing it on purpose, especially on things like Twitter. Resist responding to negative, hostile, or baiting comments, and regard any inappropriate engagement with careful thought and respect. So model the behavior, that you would like to see in others.
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
So online engagement awareness is crucial. Again, this is also being mindful about your impact and the impact on your posts on your community. How are your posts reflecting you, your brand, your practice, your organization? And then we also encourage that you just stay in the know about kind of the best practices in social media and as they come. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we just want to remind you that copyright practices are in place. Now, the government and the agencies that do these kind of things, and the copyrights and trademark, they're all kind of learning. It's grounded theory, to be honest. But just remember and be mindful that any intellectual property, images, logos, you want to look at the law. Are you able to share them? Are you able to use them? Everything in this PowerPoint, any images you see have already been vetted. They're either free and have free use, or we have asked if we can use them. So anything in our PowerPoint and some of the images you see are either created by us or we're allowed to use, and they're free and open. But you just want to remember that, especially moving forward, that if you use images or you download images, and there's a lot of free sites, especially when you're building PowerPoints, there's a lot of online platforms that offer free images and things like that. But we just want you to be aware that copyright is going to increasingly be more of an issue and enforced online. Next slide, please.
Confidentiality and communication protocols. So this is really coming up with your own guidelines and boundaries for digital communications with your clients, with your students, and with your professional community. Back in the day, we used to have office hours, and we had answering machines, and we had more set business hours. And I think being a more digital age, things are, it's really up to us to create our own guidelines and boundaries so that you don't have students and clients contacting you in the middle of the night and trying to have dialogues with you. And this is not only about how you want to be communicated with, but in terms of like what kind of response time can people expect from you? In terms of communication protocol, I'm a college professor, and with my students, it's email to set up scheduled phone calls. That's it. I tell them, don't text me. I said, wait till you graduate, we become friends, then we can text. But in the meantime, don't text me your research questions, please.
And you can establish any protocols that feel comfortable to you, but the expectation on both sides, now that the facility of reaching each other is, much more easier and has other pathways, just decide, and it's whatever you decide, but clearly with your students, with your colleagues, with your staff, with, letting them know. So, because it's not 9 to 5 through phone calls anymore through the office. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know there's a lot of bullet points. Again, endorsing and practicing conscientious social media boundaries. Basically, the first line says it. Establish, promote, and maintain intelligent personal social media participation. So some of the bullet points are: know your motivation. We already talked about that. What do you want? What do you need whenever you post anything? Regarding your emotionality, I feel if it's a good idea to post it today, it's probably a good idea to post it tomorrow. We're in asynchronous time. It's not like we're face-to-face on these platforms, so we don't have to respond. You can think about it, but just remember that emotions can really be different in terms of how or why or when or our response. So being mindful of your emotions when participating, refraining when you're maybe not feeling great, and we all are human. And again, these are very difficult times and challenging for all of us. So the engagement, the part of personal information, making sure that it's accurate. One of the things that we're thinking about now, and you demonstrated, is that we haven't thought about, which is new. Even on a platform like this, if you're doing something through telehealth, telecommunications, or a Zoom or any of those similar platforms, be mindful of the background, because people will see what, when they come to your office or you're face-to-face, you have controlled that environment. But right now, we just want to remind people that when you do have these kind of video conferencing or platforms, that where your background is what's behind you. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with it. If there's any identifying information, or if people have a judgment or ideas about you based on what your background is. So that's a new one for now, about being aware of what your background is in telehealth and ensuring that it feels comfortable to you, that whoever's watching is probably looking at everything. You may be trying to see what kind of books I read. I'll tell you if you want to know offline. Next slide, please.
Sexually compromising online relationship invitation requests. Remember, just because somebody offers to connect with you doesn't mean you have to accept. And you have a right to set boundaries with your own personal page. You do not have to accept any of their bids for an online friendship or relationship. This kind of steps into the murky waters of ethics. So just a matter of just keeping the boundaries and keeping your stuff confidential, and even think about creating a pseudonym just to protect yourself and your identity and your family and your community.
And if you're unsure, because a lot of organizations have guidelines or recommendations, so if you're not sure, check to see if they have any ideas about if engaging with students or clients. Next slide, please. Okay, so we all can do it. We're all human. If you misstep, if there's something you post that you regret or you feel didn't get a good response, again, we're all human. Just handle it, reconcile it, repair it. What we don't suggest is that you start engaging with people who are bullying you, or if someone doesn't like what you post, don't get into that. Please don't try to engage unless you really feel you want to. You're probably not going to get anywhere online. The online disinhibition effect shows that we are more likely to act out or say things online that we wouldn't face to face. Some of that can be great, but we don't suggest that you get into it with people online or on your page. Just make it right, make your apologize. I saw one this morning of someone who said, I apologized for a post, and that's all you need to do. Just make it right and just accept accountability, and it will probably be okay. Next slide, please.
You definitely don't get sucked into the call out culture, the cancel culture. Remain technologically current and savvy. Just kind of stay in the know, professional development as to what would, new technology is always coming out, kind of new ways to make our lives easier. And we just encourage you to just stay on top of it and, to see what would be best to implement into your practice, into kind of your curriculum, into your professional world.
And be careful, because we're all becoming more reliant on screens. Be careful about privacy, and that's another presentation, but just be mindful. Next slide, please, and this is our final one. Just be digitally mindful, that's it. Remember that your online presentation reveals and represents your brand personally and professionally, and that of any, like I said earlier, affiliation. So if you're unsure how a particular post might be interpreted, just do a peer review, ask for help from someone you trust, ask a colleague. So that's just it. Just remember, this is your brand, but also, again, anybody that you say that you're affiliated with or work for or align with, you're kind of talking, the assumption is that that's theirs as well. Just be digitally mindful and just ask for help. And that's basically the 12 guidelines. Next slide, please. And we're back to our thesis. Joanne?
So again, do you contemplate the effect your posts might have before posting them? Do you edit your posts? And what is your real motive, goal, need for posting, liking, friending, or not?
Or restricting it. Next slide, please. This is basically some guidelines. Go ahead, Joanne.
No, I was gonna say, so bottom line, it's always think before you post. Kind of going back to what we mentioned earlier, not posting when you're feeling emotional or hostile, sleeping on it, sleep on it. Again, have somebody proofread it, or send somebody a text message and say, this is what I would love to post online, but can't. Because sometimes we just have to get it out. We need to be heard. We need to vent. We need to use our voice. And
especially during stay at home, when we don't have that face-to-face community. We get it. We understand how challenging this is. We're in it too.
But think about it, thinking, people, people don't always have malicious intentions when they post. But again, how it's interpreted, perceived, you can't control that. And I think the more you monitor and screen what you post, I think the less likely the chance of disrespecting somebody or being.
A good thing is HALT, H-A-L-T, HALT. You might want to think about refraining from posting if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Just halt and think about it. Next slide, please.
And also think about, now kind of canceling has been, is a thing right now. It's been really popular. And you see celebrities and entertainers and other people, their posts and pictures and things that aren't appropriate, maybe inappropriate posts or from years earlier are popping up, and it's harming them now.
So I know we're running out of time, so this is just good digital citizenship. I think if we go to the next slide, Pam, and finish up.
And I think feel free to finish up. Don't feel like you need to race. We're good.
Okay, so this is Rumi. So the slide before about, really thinking about it, this basically, I believe, and I think Joanne agrees, well, I know she does, I love Rumi, but this was not meant for social media, but we feel that it really is applicable. Before you post, let's just say, let your word pass through 3 gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Now, again, if you want to rant and vent, that's your prerogative, as long as you're aware of what people might be thinking. You might never know. But especially now when it's so important for us all to be kind with each other and everyone is trying to, get through this together, which we will. But right now we're in it and we're so reliant on these online engagement, and that's a great thing. And there's so many benefits of it, and we're all about it. We are all about social media and engagement, but we just want you to make sure that when you post things that you're aware of what the reaction might be. Next slide, please. Oh, that's to our legit. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to
Joanne. So why don't you wrap it up in your brilliant overview that we've talked about that you have about all of this. What's the takeaway, Joanne?
Our overall takeaway is think before you post. Be mindful of what you're saying, and ask for help. Ask for somebody, ask for peer review. But always think before you post. Because again, your intended message might not be received that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Pam and the team and Fielding. And we really appreciate you talking to us, listeners. But what we also want you to know, again, these are just suggestions. They're just what we have thought about for a few years and peer reviewed ourselves. They're just suggestions for you, and be safe out there.
No, I think this is, it's really helpful for people to think through this whole digital behavior. Scott and Jay, I wasn't seeing the questions while I was in SlideShare, so why don't you pull out one? I see the most recent one. Can one of you guys?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So the first one that came up, or the most recent one, is someone who actually has the opposite problem, who's not very engaged with social media at the moment, and wondering if it could be a hurt to her reputation, particularly as she's completing her doctorate and looking forward to working in the industry, in the discipline.
I don't
You
think
want to answer that, Joanne? Or? I don't think anyone notices. I'm so saturated. So as she moves forward, creating with professionals and putting together whatever collateral or online presence, because she'll be creating her brand. So, but I don't think right now anyone's thinking about who's not posting. I don't feel that, unless you have a different opinion, Joanne. I don't think it harms at all, but as she starts to construct her online persona and starts to create her digital scrapbook moving forward and creates her online brand, that's where she should, focus now. But I don't think that anyone's thinking, I don't think about people who don't post.
One of the other questions that came up, excuse me, is, and I can turn my video on, I apologize. One of the other questions that came up, is
Scott.
if you have any advice for using mobile devices, only because the fact that they're mobile, it's in your hand, there's some urgency to respond, especially if you're in the middle of some other kind of activity. You just want to get a thought out there, and it really doesn't allow for that time of reflection that you're speaking to. Do you have some rules, some best practices?
Don't be a slave to notifications. That's what I said. Don't be a slave to notifications and the electronic leash. Nobody has you. You're not on a leash. You put yourself on one. So just because somebody might be dinging and notifying and doesn't mean you have to respond. And I think for people who feel like they have to respond ASAP, to look within why. I have what's called a stop, drop, and roll list. Like basically there's a very small number of people that no matter what, if they contact me, I will stop what I'm doing, excuse myself, and respond on the spot. An example would be like the school nurse. And I even have it set up with my kids that if they text me And if it's an ASAP type of thing, write 911 with the text. If it's something like, just a normal question, it can wait. But
we talk a lot
but you're not
about being an absent presence. Sorry, we talk a lot about being an absent presence or present presence. So one of the things that we also talk about is that when devices and the internet and things became portable, that really was the shift and the change. But if there's something that you need to respond to or it's really can't wait, sure, because that's fine. But we teach people how to treat us and they teach us how to treat them. So people know with me that if they text me and they didn't call me, then it might be a while, unless of course it's my kids or someone that's important, they might have to wait. But if we always react and respond and we're always so activated and so aware of all the notifications and all the emails and all the things because it's portable, then the expectation on the other side is going to be that that's what they can wait, they can know is going to happen. But we would say in each case, whatever thing you're getting, whether it's a text, whether it's an email, what does it need to be addressed right now, or can it wait? Because usually if something's really important, I'm sorry, it's a phone call.
So also you brought up the disinhibition effect, and a question came in wondering if there's a difference, do you see in platforms, for instance, TikTok and some of the visual platforms where there might be a different sense of presence? Are there changes in behavior or changes in protocol there?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I've seen, have you ever, I'm a big I'm an avid sports fan, a big football fan. So I'll read, articles about games and about like what's going on. And let's say there's an athlete who's made a mistake, right? And this is not on social media. This is just like, say, an article in the newspaper. There's comments. You read the comments. There's comments about the athlete and about the article, about, making nasty comments. It's like they have their cyber muscles because they think they're alone, and let's say they're commenting about an athlete. Oh, I can't believe he missed that pass. He should be fired. He stinks. He's horrible. And I always wonder if some of these, these people with cyber muscles would look that 6'5" linebacker in the eye and tell him how much he stunk and how he needs to be fired and he's overrated and everything else. So I don't see a difference.
And the online disinhibition effect also has some very, very good points. So someone who's maybe, a little intimidated, has some social anxiety, is exploring a lifestyle or a thought or something, and they can go really look at it with more of an anonymity to a certain extent. That's great. But we also have to remember that we self-curate our entire online presence. And we're completely the architect of it, the curator of it. And so other people who don't know us face-to-face or IRL in real life, they will think that that's who we are. One of the things that, and this is not for this presentation, that Joanne and I, and it's in our book, are very concerned about, as I think most of us or all of us should be, is how online disinhibition has impacted cyberbullying. It is not okay. So the idea of what people will say online or do online is really an issue right now. And we're trying to get a hold and really help some education and some support with that. But as far as your presence online, that is all on you. It's how you control it. That's why we're saying be more mindful when you, because every time you contribute something, it's in your digital scrapbook.
Because sometimes this could be someone's first impression of you. It's like, oh, I've never met her before. It's the first time I've heard of that person, but now, wow, you said that, you made this comment about, so.
Yeah, and it's also could be the other way, where there have been people that I knew even in a hybrid. I know them face to face, they're colleagues, they're friends, we don't hang, but I know them and I thought I had an idea about their identity construct, their belief systems, and then I see things online and I go, Scooby-Doo again, what? And I'm not sure which is real or not. The thing we want to make sure of, and I'm going to own this, is that there are people who, even in organizations where I've been, had this, agency, where I would have maybe offered them opportunities and and then when I see some of their online presence, and that is their right, I think, oh, now they will never know that this opportunity that I might have offered them is now off the table because I didn't realize, and that's fine, that they are. I was wrong because my face-to-face engagement with them gave me an impression that's very different. But the online disinhibition effect, where we'll say and do things online that we wouldn't necessarily do face-to-face, there's some great things with that. And then there's some other things that, like Joanne was saying.
And again, like if people are seeing that and that's your first impression, you might be canceled without even realizing it.
Well, with that in,
pardon, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. With that in mind, if someone is just establishing their brand online, do you have recommendations about where to start, what platforms, for instance, start with just a site, blog, or some like a LinkedIn more recommended than a Twitter or a Facebook?
Well, I can following some controversy and some feelings about that. But I also want to say those are more creators. So those kind of platforms, and TikTok came out of YouTube when YouTube changed their policies and was purchased, and it was originally designed for creators, but then it became more mainstream. So things like when you're talking about creation, that's a personal thing. So TikTok or those kind of things are very different, in my mind at least, from a website or from blogs or from, writing things and creating things in other ways. Those are more fun things. But in terms of how you would start and brand yourself, well, firstly, of course, there's people now who do this. You want to make sure the architecture of, if you're creating a website, that it works, because people will also look at your website and say, oh, well, it's not really easily mobile, or it doesn't translate from devices. But Joanne, do you want to speak to beginning the cultivation and creation of your brand online?
I think my piece of advice to somebody would be call a marketing person.
There's so many ways to do it now. So like Joanne was saying, whether you're blogging, there's people who really establish their voice and their brand through platforms where they blog or they contribute. But if you're going to, I think it's really about, if you're going to do a website, you probably want to talk to a professional and then have someone help you build content that is in your vision, whatever that is.
Another question came in is, how can we address good online citizen behavior with so many celebrities and politicians who do not follow these rules? So in addition to the guidelines, do you address the idea of modeling online risky behavior? Because I think there's a cultivation in that alone.
There's so many good examples out there as to how not to be.
That's why I was being quiet. Oh, you just put a big in Joanne. This is like her thing. Joanne, I'm stepping back. Go ahead.
No, I think there's just so many examples of just how not to be. And I think it's a matter of educating people and teaching them about good digital citizenship, and also seeing what like there's examples of happening to people who don't practice good digital citizenship. Like, for instance, a recent example of, a celebrity is Nick Cannon made some anti-Semitic and racist remarks, right? So he was called out for that, and then he apologized, and then he was called out for that. So it's this whole, he's trying to make good, but nobody's accepting it. So it's like, that's a really good example of think before you post. Keep maybe some of your more controversial opinions to yourself. And I think I think there's enough examples out there to show that they're not invincible, because you see people, losing their shows, losing, their brands are tarnished, their shows are canceled, they're losing contracts. I mean, but I wish there was more good examples of good digital citizenship and watching them get more opportunities and embracing the online community as opposed to calling, canceling, calling out, saying unkind things.
Right. And we just saw how wonderful all of this can be. Some of the stuff that's going on right now, the education, the awareness, this is good. But we just recommend be the type of person online that you are in real life. So if you are we're taught, be a good citizen in the world. And that's what I work a lot with kids, and Common Sense Media is a really great platform online that kind of gives some examples for this. But we just recommend, if you wouldn't say it face to face, or you wouldn't broadcast it standing on a stage in front of a crowd, then think about why. And if there is something you feel cautious, or maybe you have anxiety about it, maybe ask someone before you engage. But we just say be authentic. It's why authenticity is key, which is one of our guidelines. If your online presence matches your character and citizenship face to face, then you're probably okay. If it doesn't, you might want to ask someone why, or think about why. And again, it might not be a bad thing, but do you match? Do your personas in real life match your online citizenship?
I think it's really great advice. It brings me to one other quick question, and that is in terms of
my mother would
creating.
approve of that.
Or my criterion, excuse me one sec, Jay.
No.
My criterion is, how would I feel if this went viral? Or how would I feel if, would I post this if it was going to end up on a billboard?
Would my mother be upset if I didn't play well with others online? Because, it's the playground thing. It's like, so it's really about, will you stand by what you posted online? Would you do it if the opportunity presented itself face-to-face at a dinner party, at a school, at a presentation to others? So really just matching your citizenship. We try to be good citizens and friends and colleagues and neighbors. So is that how you're presenting online, or do you have a curation and a persona online that is very different? And if you do, you might want to look at why. There might be a reason. There might be something you want to talk to someone about.
I think that's very sound. Actually, that answers my last question. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us. Please stay safe and be kind to one another, both online and in real life. Joanne, what's your final words?
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. It's been really nice meeting some of you and sharing this information. And think before you post, and think about how, practice empathy. If you want to respond in a certain way, or if you want to call somebody out, think about how if you were that person in being called out, or
the golden rule.
Yep.
This is really, I think this is a nice job, really helpful sort of boundaries to get people to be thoughtful about social media, especially that there's so many ways to express yourself. It's hard to remember that it's all part of one universe. But so that's really helpful. We're out of questions. If you guys want to close up with any final thoughts, otherwise, just want to let everyone know that there is a break until 1 o'clock. Come back, because you'll get to see Joanne again on the panel with the past members and current editors of the APA Journal Psychology of Popular Media. Get the words in the right order there. So any more from you guys?
No.
Awesome. Thank you so much.